Cadences are the most important thing that people learning to write music are not using correctly. Ignore them and the music can feel wandering, unbalanced, and uninteresting.
Gee, this is uplifting.
Cedric Thorpe Davey, who wrote the book Musical Structure and Design, puts cadences into 3 categories. The first is those that give a feeling of rest.
Oh.
The technical term for this is an authentic cadence, and they can be perfect or imperfect. Let's listen to this short track, Hudson Moves Out, from Breath of the Wild. The piece is in the key of D flat major, and for the last chord, we have a D flat major chord, with D flat in the bass and D flat in the melody. It's technically a D flat 6-9 chord, but that's really just an issue of flavor. The important thing is that with that melody and bass both on the tonic and finishing on the 1 chord of the key, we're about as stable as we can get. There is a sense of complete resolution, or rest, as we called it before, and we'd call this a perfect authentic cadence. The cadence is essential for making the theme feel complete, even a theme that's only 3 bars long, like this one. Here's something a little different in Rivali's theme. This chord in measure 8 also counts as a perfect authentic cadence. It's an F minor chord in root position, there's an F in the melody, and it feels completely at rest. The twist is that the melody actually starts in A flat major and modulates to F minor in the second half. But that perfect authentic cadence in F minor feels completely settled and at rest, even though we're no longer in our original key.
Impressive, I know.
Not only can we use a cadence to close a theme, we can also use it to confirm a new tonal center and keep our harmony moving along in interesting ways. Now let's check out Cass's theme. The theme starts in A minor, but that C major chord in bars 7 and 8 feels at rest. Just like with Rivali's theme, we've modulated to a relative key. The difference is that instead of the root of the chord in the melody, it's the third, that E. When we have an authentic cadence with something other than the root in the melody, it's considered an imperfect authentic cadence. It's like a slightly less restful version of the perfect authentic cadence, still giving us a feeling of stability, but not quite as final. And Cass's theme uses the difference between the perfect and imperfect types perfectly. The first half of the theme ends in the relative major key with an imperfect authentic cadence, but the theme isn't over yet. The second half of the theme brings us back home to A minor and ends with the perfect authentic cadence. So we get this beautiful balance of somewhat restful in a related key and then completely at rest in the home key. I want to point out that just because you have a 1 chord or a 5-1 progression somewhere does not automatically mean you have a cadence. As Alan Belkin puts it, when harmonic punctuation and rhythmic punctuation coincide, we speak of cadence. The harmony is important, but the position in the form and that sense of punctuation are important factors too. The second type of cadences are those that feel incomplete. The technical term for this is a half cadence. And in traditional harmony, this means reaching a cadence on the 5 chord. In contemporary music, we don't have to be so strict. It's really that feeling of being incomplete that we want to focus on. Think of the half cadence as a question mark. At the end of the first theme in Gerudo Town, we cadence on the 5 chord. Notice that it's at the end of an 8-bar structure, the end of a phrase, and the rhythmic activity of the melody has settled down and taken a breath. All of these things come together to make it feel like we've finished a complete thought. But because we've cadenced on the 5 chord, it feels incomplete. There's this itch for the music to get back home to A flat.
I won't rest until the calamity falls.
In Daruk's theme, we also have a half cadence, but it's not the usual 5 chord. The piece is in C minor, mostly, but this melody cadences on a D flat major 7 sharp 11 chord, basically borrowing the flat 2 chord from the C Phrygian mode. It's a beautiful chord, and it does exactly what a traditional half cadence would do, which is to give us a feeling of the music being incomplete. When it settles back into the C chord in the next bar, there's this feeling of return to home and of relief. Also notice how the half cadence is stretched out for extra time with this fermata, which is a wonderful way to sustain the tension and keep us itching for resolution just a little bit longer. I mentioned at the start that beginners don't use cadences correctly, and it's really about this sense of taking a moment to breathe at regular intervals throughout the form with different degrees of tension and release.
Remember that, and you'll be fine.
There's a third type of cadence, which is probably the most fun, and that is those that surprise us.
It helps when I think about.
The most common of these is the deceptive cadence, which is when people are expecting a cadence to a certain chord, but you deceive them and give them something else instead. Hateno Village has a classic version of this. The final phrase has E minor 7 going to A sus4, a classic 2-5 progression that is clearly setting us up for our usual 2-5-1. But oh no, the composer has deceived us, and instead of the expected D major chord, we end up with a B minor, the 6th chord. 6 is a common substitute for 1, so though it's not quite what we expected, it's also not like we went completely into outer space. Notice how the melody is still that expected D, it's just the flavor of the chord has been modified slightly for extra variety and interest. Here's what we expected. And here's what we got instead. Rito Village is a bit more adventurous. The theme starts in G minor, and although it moves around a little bit, towards the end of the theme, we still feel like G is home. We're on this E flat major chord, the flat 6 of G minor. It feels like the phrase is about to wrap up, but then it keeps going. And we suddenly move down a third to this C major chord, and then we keep going and move down a third again to A flat major 7. Where we end up with this half cadence on a chord that had nothing to do with our original key, and ends up being used to modulate to D flat for the next section. But the reason it works is that semantically, we're at the end of the section. We are expecting things to wrap up, and instead, we get teased along for a while. We still eventually have some sort of cadence. It's still important to get there. It's just that most people probably didn't have A flat major 7 as their pick for likeliest places to end up.
What the?
A cadence can't surprise us if we aren't set up to expect anything. So in the cases where you want to do something interesting, counterintuitively, the best way to set it up is with a cliche expected thing. Make people feel confident that a certain resolution is coming before you surprise them with something else. I used this in a scene for a film I scored years ago. The main character is recording a video where he confesses to a murder, but he changes his mind and decides not to send it to the police. I used a G minor over D to D7 flat 9 progression to make it feel like a strong resolution in the key of G minor is coming. But after the 5 chord, instead of resolving to 1, I just changed the D7 flat 9 chord to a D diminished 7, stripping it of all its power and leaving us feeling completely unresolved and disappointed. Manipulating the cadence and playing with expectations is a really powerful tool. The thing is, cadences are not the only thing composers struggle with. If you're serious about writing good music, then you can't afford to miss this video here, where you'll learn how to take boring diatonic harmony and turn it into something rich and beautiful and make your music 10 times better, maybe even 100 times more interesting. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.